Be there in a minute. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. In the name of our living Christ. Amen. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by Him. Without Him was not anything made that was made. In Him was life, and the life was the light of man. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness, remember this word, comprehended it not. This is some of the most beautiful, beautiful language in the whole of the books of the Bible. It is some of the most beautiful and poetic language that we are given in our theology. And today we look into it a little bit. When I speak to my resident theologian sometimes about what should I say about Scripture, Stephanie suggested that I just read this and then just sit down. She's always operating on your behalf. He's always thinking about you. The New Testament, as you all know, the New Testament does not really have in it a fully developed Trinitarian doctrine. But the language that we have in this particular scriptural passage, which was written so much later than the others, almost inexorably moves us toward the thinking of the Trinitarian language, which comes out of the 3rd century, the councils of Nicaea and things like that. I have been thinking about all of this, and one of the things that strikes me about the language that we have in this scripture for today, and the language that we have in Genesis 1, the first chapter, what strikes me about that is that we have two clearly defined actions of a loving and ever-present God. The first action, I mentioned this in our Christmas Eve service, I mentioned this then. The first action was the creation. In the beginning, the Spirit of God moved over the face of the earth, and God said, God spoke, and there was light. So God acted in creation, in the creating of our creation. And then we have a period of time that passed, and we know that in our lives, certainly I've blinked and I'm 50 years past. So if God blinks, it's 1,000 years or 2,000 years or 5,000 years or 14.2 billion years pass. And the world struggles with itself. The people in the world struggle with each other and struggle with how to live in this world. And they struggle so much that God required of us. He said, let me show you. Let me show you how it's done. And into that philosophy, into that generosity of heart, God gave us Jesus to show us how it's done. It's so much a gift to have someone show us. I recall, I've talked about this before, I've had people hold me by the hand and show me how to do things. Take my hand in their hand and show me how to do things. And this has been a wonderful, wonderful gift It's been a wonderful gift. As I think about all of this, and I think about the scripture that we're given here, there are a couple of pieces that strike me. And one of them is that in our scripture it says, "But all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become the children of God, who were born not of the blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of humankind, but of God." So we are reminded that God is acting, that God has given us an individual to show us how to live in this world. And God is also giving us then the power. God says, here Jim, or here Ron, or here Aaron, or here Angie, here Lori, here, this is how I want you to do it. Now, do it. Do it. You all know, those of you who are parents know what it's like. You train some of your children to do things in the house, and then you kind of have to let them do it. And then when they go off to college, for Pete's sake, that's a really hard place, because all of the things that you have come to know and love about your children, and all of the things that you feel that you've tried to teach your children, you begin to wonder whether that was enough, don't you? But regardless of whether or not that is enough, you let them go. It hurts like everything to let them go, but you do. And in doing that, you have passed over to them the power to become the children of God. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. When we think about, my brothers and sisters, what it has taken for us to come here this day, to be gathered here as Christians in this place, when we think about what has brought us here, we realize that there have been individuals in the world who have taught us, who have demonstrated to us what it is like to be children of God. And they have passed not only their lessons to us, but they've given us the power to partake of those lessons, to share in those lessons, to use those lessons, or to decide not to use those lessons. You see, because there's a choice here. He came into his own, and his own received him not. But to as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the children of God. Here we are in this new year. Here we are facing all of the things that are before us. Here we are looking into the darkness that seems to be all around us. And here we need to remember that there is light. That there is light. When Jesus was born into this world, God gave flesh. God gave flesh to the Word. And the words then ceased to be abstract concepts. The word love ceased to be an abstract construct when Jesus demonstrated to us the love that he had for the world, that God has for us. And here is the beauty of all of this life-giving light which is in the world. We also, as Barbara Brown Taylor reminds us, we also have words that we individually have been gifted, especially to be able to give to the world. We have words that are made flesh in us. And as they are made flesh in us, we are living then into this creative process, into this thing that God has given us. in the creation of humankind and in the presence of Jesus Christ. And so what are some of those words? Well, those words may be the creation of beauty. I know this lady sitting here in the front row has done needlepoint, which is extraordinary. It is an extraordinary gift to the world. And not only that, but she had 5 boys, 6 if you count her husband. And I know that there are among you persons who understand what it is like to minister one to another. I know that in you are ways, and I've seen it demonstrated, to care and love for others. Even yesterday, individuals in this congregation gave life to the Word, gave life to the word service and love, traveling a pretty good distance from their home to help move a person who needed their help out of that person's place that had not been a good place for him. And they moved him to a new place, and it took all day long to do it. And they gave flesh to the word love, and they gave flesh to the word service. And the Word was made flesh among us. And we beheld His glory. So as we enter into this year, do not lose sight of the gifts that you have been given. Do not lose sight of the special ability that you have to bring life to those wonderful things that Jesus gave to us in His life. So that you go out the door of this place today and you give light to the world. You have the power and you have the responsibility to do that. Help me to do that too, please. In Jesus' name.